Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Reading from the book Al-Kaba'ir, Major Sins. We reach major sin number 54. The author, Al-Hafidh Al-Dhahabi, rahimahullah, he says, Al-Kabir al-Rabi'a wal-Khamsun. Sin number 54, Al-Abdul Abiq wa Nahwuhu. He says, a runaway slave. وَنَحْوُهُ, and people like him or people like her. He says, Al-Abdul Abiq, a slave who runs away from his owner, from his master. وَنَحْوُهُ, and someone similar to him. So therefore, a few issues that pertain to this chapter heading. It says here, وَنَحْوُهُ. What does that mean? Someone who's similar to a runaway slave, which we'll read in a minute what the commentator says. Someone such as a child running away from home. A son runs away from his parents. A wife runs away from her husband. Or a husband abandons his wife, for example. The main concept here, the anchor that holds the boat still, is someone upon which rights are due. Heavy, serious rights are due, and they run away, they abandon, they flee, neglecting those rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made mandatory. Whether it's the right of a servant and a master, whether it's the right of a son and a father, a daughter and a father, or whatever the case may be. Everybody understand this? He says, وَنَحْوُهُ. That's the first issue. Second issue pertaining to the chapter heading is, does this necessarily apply to a situation which is considered to be unbearable or borderline unbearable, whether it's a person in servitude, someone in captivity, in slavery, a child in a house in which the person says, I can't stay here. It's too unbearable. Everybody understand this? It's inhumane treatment. It's total savage treatment. Everybody understand this? And the situation is unbearable, or at least close to unbearable. Does this apply as well? If a slave says, I'm in the captivity of these people and they treat me beyond description, the atrocities, the horrors are beyond description, I have no choice but to run away. It's unbearable. Okay? Or a child says, a teenager says, my father does this to me. Or a young girl says, my mother, my father, they have molested me, sexually abused me. They've done all types of things. They do all types of things to me. I can't stay here. I have to go. Okay, does this apply? Is it an absolute ruling that it's a major sin? Or is it speaking about someone who's in a spot, in a place, and there are people who have rights over him or her, and they just refuse? They just what? They refuse. I'm leaving. I'm not staying here. And it's something that's been mandated and legislated by Allah, Rabbul Alameen, whether it's slavery, whether it's marriage, whether it is parenthood, fatherhood, motherhood. Everybody understand this? Whatever, as we just explained. Everybody clear on this or not? As far as the details of slavery in Islam, is slavery permissible? Can a person have a slave in Islam? Can a person have a sex slave? Very hot topic in 2017. We've spoken these issues in other places, and it is not the proper time to explain it right here. However, just like any other concept that runs parallel in the name and the title with other concepts that are known in Western culture or Eastern culture or pop culture, does not mean that it's the same in Islam. Everybody understand this? Such as domestic abuse or beating women, as it states in the Quran. Everybody understand this? The term وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ, hit them, and domestic abuse is similar title, if not exact title, beat your wife. The Quran does not specify where to beat her, how you can beat her, so on and so forth. It says beat them when they are disobedient, when they're not listening, whatever the case may be. So the title is similar, but it does not necessitate that the concept is what? Parallel. Everybody understand this? It does not necessitate that. And this is a very important principle in Islam, and that is names and titles share things. When the names and the titles are by themselves, they aren't restricted to something else. They're not attached to something else. But the moment the name or the title becomes attached to something, then there is no parallel anymore. Everybody understand this? This is a principle in Islam, very important. If you start all the way at the top, at the beginning, we talk about the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says, it says, أَنزَلَهُ بِعِلْمِهِ, that Allah sent it down with and through His knowledge, His ilm, Allah's ilm. Now, Allah also says about the believers. Give me a verse from the Quran in which Allah speaks about the believers knowing things. Any ayah in which ilm is attributed to a slave. Knowledge. We said ilm. An example, an ayah in which the word ilm is attributed to a slave. Allah says in Surah when He speaks about the women who make hijrah and they go to you. Allah says, فَإِنْ عَلِمْتُمُهُنَّ مُؤْمِنَاتٍ. Allah says, if you know them to be what? Believing women, then do not what? Aywa. So the word ilm is attributed to the what? To the people, the Muslims in Medina. Naam. So the word ilm is mentioned with Allah, and the word ilm is mentioned with the what? With the slave. And يَعْلَمُهُ عُلَمَاءُ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيل. Ayat kathira jiddan. Allah talks about ilm, ulama. إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. The word ilm is attributed to the slave, the servant of Allah. And the word ilm is also attributed to Allah Azza wa Jal. إِنَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ Halim. Everybody understand this? Tayyib. Al-Muhim, what's important is that Allah knows everything. But the slave has also been described as having what? Ilm. So when the word ilm by itself, we have two words, ilm. It's not attached to anything. It's what? Parallel. But once ilm is attached to Allah and then attached to the slave, it's no what? It's gone. It's incomparable. The knowledge of Allah and the knowledge of the slave. Everybody understand this? Allah says He is qawi, strong. And Allah, He says what? Qawiyun, He says what? Allah is strong and powerful, mighty. Naam. Everybody understand this? And the slaves, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says many things about them. Is that they also have what? قَالَ الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا. Allah says those who are deemed what? Weak. And the opposite is? Everybody understand this? But once it's attributed here, then it's no longer what? No parallel. Very important principle. And that's a long discussion with regards to Allah's attributes. The istiwa of the slave and the istiwa of Allah have no comparison, no similarities. Because it clearly says, He, ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى, Huwa, Allah Azza wa Jal, He made istiwa. فَإِذَا Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in the Quran about her, He says, when you and those who believe, when you ascend upon the fulk, فقل الحمد لله الذي نجانا من القوم الظالمين فإذا استويت أنت ومن معك على الفلك. Allah says when you have made istiwa لتستووا على, Allah says the backs of the animals. You make the dua. When you ride on the animals that Allah made subservient to you. And this goes on any example. So the istiwa of Allah has no comparison, no similarity to the istiwa of the slave. Everybody understand this? That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, moving forward, talking about the human beings. The word slavery and slavery, two words, parallel. Islamic slavery, Southern slavery, African slavery, Chinese slavery, Mongolian slavery is now what? They're not the same. Are some concepts correct? In parallel, they will remain. But it's not the same. It's not what? It's not the same. Beat them and beat your wife. Now, this is attributed to Jahiliyyah, to an angry, drunk man. And this is attributed to the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Islam. The best of you are those who are best of to their wives, the Prophet ﷺ says. Obviously, once it's attributed here, then it's no more what? It's not the same anymore. Everyone understand this? So we've explained that in other places with regards to slavery in Al-Islam. And at the end of the day, whether it's this or whether it's that, no matter how you explain it, no matter how you interpret it, no matter how much wisdom you put on it, it is what it is. In Islam, the Aqeedah of Islam, the Sharia of Islam, the character of Islam will never, ever, can never, ever, was never, ever, and will never, ever be politically correct. Period. If you want Islam that's politically correct, then you're going to make kufr akbar. There is no politically correct Islam. Period. Today, in modern times, slavery is something which is outwardly totally reject it and denounce. It was something that was in the past. Some nations say we have progressed, we have evolved. That's in the past. Other nations try to, or states or people try to sweep it under the rug like it never ever happened. Everybody understand this? But outwardly, politically, what? It's totally what? Rejected. Period. Everybody understand this? Men being better than women is totally what? Politically incorrect. Gays, homosexuals, LGBT, and the list goes on. These things are totally what? Incorrect. Politically incorrect. You can't say that. It's unaccepted. So Islam, not just the Sharia, as we can say, Sharia law. No, the Aqidah of Islam is politically incorrect. Because according to the modern standards and values, the Aqidah of Islam is intolerant, teaches hate, teaches religious fanaticism and bigotry. Only the Jews and the Christians will burn in hell. The kafirin, the munafiqeen, the grave worshippers. Allah has cursed them. This is what it says in the Quran. And the only people that will go to Jannah will be the believers. That's religious bigotry. That's intolerance. Everybody understand this? And that is politically what? Incorrect. And it has nothing to do with Sharia and Sharia law. Some people, they try to narrow it to just the Sharia law. No, the actual what? The creed of Islam. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. Allah says in the Quran. It just doesn't get no clearer than what? إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَعَنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. Allah has what? Cursed the what? Does not get simpler than that. Everybody understand this? So therefore, Islam was not made to be politically correct. If you try to make Islam politically correct, you're going to run into a major problem. You may wiggle out of this. You may sidestep that. You may explain it like this and kada, but no for sure. You can run and dip and dodge. You're going to run into a solid brick wall. And you're either going to have to affirm it or reject it. Everybody clear on this or not? There is no getting away from that. This verse is out of context, but what about this verse? Well, no, that was sent down about specific people. What about that one? It just doesn't work like that. Everybody understand this? So that's the bottom line with regards to slavery, with regards to domestic abuse, with regards to homosexuality, lesbianism, with regards to Jews, anti-Semitism. The list goes on. Everybody clear on this or not? So therefore, the author, he says, Al-Abdul Abiq. He says, the runaway slave, wa nahwuhu. The editor, he says in the footnotes, مثل الولد الهارب من أبيه ومن تفلت من أصحاب الحق أو حقوق عليه وقابلها بالنكران والإساءة كما بلوناه على بعض من أحسن به إليه وربيناه وعلمناه قبل ذلك بصنيع سوء أو بصنيع سوء دون مسوغ شرعي إلا الحقد أو الحقد والحسد وسوء الظن وتتبع الريب ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله وإلى الله نشكو صنيع هؤلاء ونسأل الله لهم الهداية ويتعين كون صنيع هؤلاء من الكبائر بما سيأتي تحت الكبير السبعين. The editor, he says, similar to a runaway slave is a child who runs away, as we said. He says, or those who run away from the people who have rights over them. Those who run away from people who have rights over them. He says, and instead of fulfilling those rights, they totally reject them, denounce them, and just perform in a nasty, evil way. He says, as we have been tested, he says, we have been afflicted with this. The author lives in Jordan. He says, we've been afflicted with this. With many people we have treated kindly. We have raised and we have taught. Listen to this. We were kind to them. We raised them and we taught them. He says, but they chose to do the exact opposite and be evil and be nasty without any type of permissible reason, except for malice, envy, bad thoughts, and suspicious investigating, looking for things that are bad. He says, وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. There's no strength except for the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just stop and think about this. How many people here sat in this masjid, took notes, wrote down things, benefited, got letters of recommendation, went overseas, kada, and what did they do, Sufyan? They did what? Exactly what he said. Oh, no, I never studied with my brother. No, he helped me out with a few things. That was it. Never studied with Muhammad ibn Munir. Never. He said, I never studied with Muhammad ibn. I never studied with him. He just helped me out. That's just not decent. You can't do that. Sit with somebody, study with somebody, learn from someone. They teach you you're a mushrik, kafir, Hindu, Christian, accept Islam. You come into the deen, you start learning. You go overseas and then you just do what? Turn your back. You don't do that. Everybody understand this? You cannot just reject someone's good treatment of you. Everybody understand this? Khairan, inshallah. He says here, we complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we ask Allah to guide them. He says, and it's a must that what these people do is a major sin. It says labud, as will be explained in sin number 70. Right, back to the metin, back to the text of Dhahabi. He says, hadith number 358, قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أبق العبد لم تقبل له صلاة وقال أيما عبد أبق فقد برئت منه الذمة رواهما مسلم. The first hadith, the Prophet says, if a slave runs away, his prayer will not be accepted. His prayer will not be accepted. The next hadith, he says, any slave that runs away, then the dhimma. The word dhimma has many meanings, whether it's the protection of Allah, the covenant of Islam, is free from him, it's gone. He has it no more. The author says these two hadiths have been collected by Imam Muslim. The hadiths clearly prove that a slave to run away is a what? Major sin. Because two things were mentioned. One, prayer not being accepted. Any hadith that says anyone who does this will not have their prayer accepted means that that act is a what? It's from the Kaba'ir. Everybody understand this? As we explained. Secondly, any word, the word dhimma is mentioned and is no longer. He who prays in the masjid, he who prays in jama'ah, he who prays in fajr will have the dhimma of Allah, the protection of Allah, the covenant of Allah, the pact of Allah, and the exact opposite. He has no dhimma anymore. That proves that that act is a what? Is a major sin. It's from the Kaba'ir. The author, he then says, وَرَبُّنُ خُزَيْمَةُ فِي صَحِيحِ مِنْ حَدِيثِ جَابِرٍ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ قَالَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم ثَلَاثَةٌ لَا يَقْبَلُ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ صَلَاةً وَلَا تَصْعَدُ لَهُمْ حَسَنَةٌ الْعَبْدُ الْآبِقُ حَتَّى يَرْجَعْ إِلَى مَوَالِيهِ وَالْمَرْأَةُ السَّاخِطُ عَلَيْهَا زَوْجُهَا حَتَّى يَرْضَى وَالسَّكْرَانُ حَتَّى يَصْحُو. Ibn Khuzaymah, he reports a hadith in his Sahih, and this shows once again is that Imam Al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim were not the only ulama of hadith who wrote books that were called Sahih. There are many other ulama who wrote books that they considered to be what? Sahih, and they gave the title. Was all the hadith Sahih? That's not the discussion. The point is that there are other books of the genre. Everybody, there are other books of the what? Of the genre. Just like we said about the what? For imams. There were other imams before them, after them, and lived with them. Everybody clear on this? And it's ludicrous to think that out of 1,000 million Muslims from Iraq, Khorasan, this country, Egypt, all over the place, and there will only be what? Four or two. That's just ludicrous. Okay? If you talk about Michael Jordan, to think there was no other great, not good, but great player in the NBA for the duration of years that he plays is something that's totally what? That doesn't even make sense. But his name, obviously, has become what? Famous. From China to New Mexico. There's no doubt about that. Michael Jordan, his number, his team, his sneakers, his clothes, his commercials. For reasons, no doubt about that. His greatness, his talent, his skill, his work ethic, what he did, his legacy. But it is totally foolish to think that there was no other good player in the NBA except for what? Michael Jordan. That doesn't make what? Sense. On his own team, there were what? And many others, great players. Dennis Rodman, before them. Everybody understand this? Paxton, depending on how deep you go. Everybody clear on this? They were what? They were great players. Everybody understand this?
By David Stern. And every time he was touched, he was fouled. That's a whole different...
And the whole different, clear. And there are many others. Everybody understand this?
He may not be the greatest player.
Clear. Everybody understand this? And the list goes on. Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley. And the list goes on of what? Great players. So it doesn't make sense to think that he was the only legend of his time. Everybody understand this? And the same applies to Imam Al-Bukhari. Without any disrespect, what? Or Michael Jordan. But it was NBA. Basketball, what? Association. How many teams are there? From the east to the what? To the west. So how can there only be what? One. So Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, Ahmed. That's it. No other great imams of fiqh lived. That doesn't make what? Too much sense. Imam al-Bukhari, Imam Muslim were the only great scholars of hadith. Or those who say that Imam al-Bukhari, he was ilm al-hadith began with him and ended with him. And what he did in his book dictates to what the other ulama considered to be correct or incorrect. Imam al-Bukhari, before he was born, before he was raised, there was what? Ilm al-hadith. When he died, there remained what? Ilm hadith, and there were many great contributors to the science of hadith up until this day, without any disrespect to Bukhari or Muslim, but we're trying to make a what? A point. Everybody clear on this? Hopefully the example of Michael Jordan is what? Clear. Crystal clear. Moving forward, he says, Ibn Khuzaymah, He has a hadith in his Sahih, reported by Jabir ibn Abdullah. The Messenger of Allah said, 3 people, Allah will not accept their prayer, nor will they have any good deeds raised and elevated to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 1, the slave who runs away until he returns back to his masters. Number 2 is a woman whom her husband is angry with. Her husband is upset and angry with her until he's pleased. Number 3 is the drunkard until he becomes sober. Is the one who drinks until he what? Becomes sober. He then says, وفي المستدرك للحاكم من حديث علي رضي الله عنه مرفوعا لعن الله من تولى غير مواليه. It states in a book called Al-Mustadrak, which is by a great scholar called Al-Hakim. It goes on to show you there were other ulama who wrote what? Books of hadith. He has the narration of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu that says, the Messenger of Allah said, Allah curses he says, man tawalla ghayra mawali, who shows loyalty to other than those who own him. He goes and he runs away, he does away with their ownership and he adopts someone else. وفي المستدرك على شرط الشيخين من حديث فضالة بن عبيد مرفوعة 3 لا تسأل عنهم رجل فارق الجماعة وعصى إمامه ومات عاصيا وعبد أبق فمات وامرأة غاب عنها زوجها وقد كفاها المؤنة فتبرجت. He says here, it also states in his book Mustadrak, and it fulfills, he says, Shart al-Shaykhain. In other words, he's saying that this is a hadith that has not been collected by Bukhari and Muslim, but it has the same grade of authenticity as Bukhari and Muslim. It suits the standards and the conditions of Bukhari and Muslim. It's a very, 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 very long discussion, which we're not going to get into right now. What's important is, Fadala ibn Ubaid, the companion, he said that the Messenger of Allah said, 3 people you should never ask about. 3 people, don't even have any care or concern about them. Their situation is that bad. He says, number 1 is a man who leaves the jama'ah. He leaves the jama'ah. Now, what does the word jama'ah mean? It's a very long discussion, and there are many misconceptions on what the word jama'ah means. Some people, they have a total wrong understanding of it, incorrect understanding of it. Others have a partial correct understanding of it. From the meanings of the jama'ah is kada. From the meanings of the word jama'ah is the majority, the group, the body of the Muslims. From the meanings of the jama'ah is the haqq, even if you're by yourself. That does not restrict and monopolize the meaning of the what? Jama'ah. هذا غلط فاضح. انتبه لنفسك. كثير من الشباب يخطي في هذا الشيء. يشذ عن الناس، يشذ عن الأمة ويقول قال ابن مسعود الجماعة ما وافق الحق وإن كنت وحدك فأنت الجماعة. هذا غلط ترى. Many people, they make this mistake, okay, and just going against everything, everybody that doesn't suit their specific, as we say, tightrope, plank, walk the plank interpretation. This is what is. If it is not like this to the T, then it's what? Batil, 100% rubbish. Throw it out the window. Everybody understand this? And then they say, I'm the jama'ah. We're the jama'ah. Because Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, the jama'ah is that which agrees with the haqq. Even if you're alone, then you're the jama'ah. First of all, that's not the Prophet Ibn Mas'ud. Secondly, what did Ibn Mas'ud mean? Thirdly, who told you that you're on the haqq? Who said that? Would you have revelation from Allah to say that your interpretation is correct? And everybody else is going to the fire of hell except for you. And you didn't study nowhere. You can barely speak Arabic. That doesn't make any sense. What is the probability and the likelihood of someone who's been trained, studied for years, to miss something that's so clear and simple and you to pick it up on the streets of New York City? It's possible, but what's the what?
Likelihood. Probability.
Doesn't make any what? Sense. Everybody clear on this? So yeah, I mean, that's just something that's very sad. Many people, they fall into that, deeming and declaring themselves alone to be upon the haqq. And anyone, as we said, not who doesn't take the kitab, the sunnah, no. We mentioned specifically interpretation, which is a plank in which is you slip, you go into the water with the sharks. No, to the T, like this. Don't sit like that. Don't have that, this one, that one. It's like this, narrow, totally narrow. And if you make 1 centimeter outside of that, then you're what? Upon batil. He who doesn't accept this interpretation of the deen has left the jama'ah, and we're the jama'ah. That doesn't make any what? Doesn't make any sense. You have no knowledge. You have no experience. You have no financial stability. You have no infrastructure. You have nothing. But just going against everybody and anything and anyone. And then you say, we're what? We're the Jama'ah. That can't be Islam. That's impossible for the deen of Allah Rabbul Alameen to be reckless like how you are. It just doesn't what? Doesn't add up. So the Jama'ah has several meanings. And you read the kalam of the ulama of the past, and you'll find several meanings of the word Jama'ah and several different depictions of the word Jama'ah. Sometimes the word Jama'ah means Muslim land, Muslim country. Sometimes the word Jama'ah means the actual people of the what? Of the masjid, the musalla, the Jama'ah. Everybody understand this? Sometimes the word Jama'ah means just being together. يعني الإجتماع. Antamai. And sometimes the word Jama'ah means the actual what? The haqq, no doubt. No matter who's with it. One person or 100 people. Everybody clear on this or not? Everybody understand this? But the Jama'ah does not belong what? To me or you. It's not monopolized by any country, by any culture, by any time zone, by any language, by any skin complexion. The Jama'ah is not owned and monopolized by what? Anybody. Abadan. And that's a very, very dangerous mistake that many people, they fall into. And they end up, subhanAllah, sending more people away from the sunnah than actually what? Bringing them to the sunnah. The time, the energy, and the effort that's used to kick people away, get out, go, could easily be done 3, 4, 5 times more and bringing what? Saving people's souls. And that's unfortunate. The hadith says, he leaves the Jama'ah وَعَصَى إِمَامَهُ وَمَاتَ عَصِيًا, and he disobeys his imam and he dies a sinner. The hadith itself clearly states that the word Jama'ah is not restricted to the tafsir of what? Ibn Mas'ud. The hadith is not talking about what? The haqq. It's not talking about the truth. It's talking about something that's what? Tangible. An actual imam, meaning a what? A country. An Islamic body. Everybody clear on this or not? Everybody understand this? So, yani, how people can become so blind. The hadith, the famous hadith you memorize in 40 hadith of Nawawi. Naam, no Muslim's blood is lawful except for what? Ihda thalath. 3 things. From those things are who? Or those people are who? It says, La. What does the hadith say? This is from the elementary teachings. 40 hadith Nawawi. لا يحل دم امرئ مسلم إلا بإحدى ثلاث. الثيب الزاني. What does the hadith say? Al-Mufariq lil-Jama'ah. He who leaves the what? The Jama'ah. طيب, moving forward. He says here, وَعَبْدٌ أَبَقَ فَمَاتَ, and a slave who runs away and dies. He died in a state of rebellion and running away. He says, وَامْرَأَةٌ غَابَ عَنْهَا زَوْجُهَا وَقَدْ كَفَاهَا الْمُؤْنَى فَتَبَرَّجَتْ. He says, and a woman whose husband goes away, he's absent, he has sufficed her, he has provided for her, yet and still she chooses to do what? He says, فَتَبَرَّجَتْ. She wants to uncover, wear perfume, go outside, show her charm and her beauty to men and women in the street, even though she has no reason or no what? Need to do that. Khairan, inshallah. That's a very long discussion right there. With the hadith, how beautiful it is that the husband gave her what she needed. And there's no need for you to go out and get a job and wear pants and have your hair out. Everybody understand this? Where it clearly says, kafaha al-mu'na, is that what she needs is what? There. What she wants may be a different story, but what she needs is what? Is there. Everybody clear on this? Khairan, inshallah. One last piece with regards to the concept of slavery. As some advice for myself and for all of the Muslims, is that we have to be very careful not to be hypocritical, inshallah ta'ala, when mentioning and explaining these concepts. As many of the kuffar, most of the kuffar are extremely hypocritical when they have these different concepts, such as slavery. Now, anyone who's read anything about the history of this country, he knows that slavery was an integral part of American history, integral part. Whether it's the version that's taught in the school books and in the documentaries and the movies, or whether it's the actual real, raw, uncut, organic history that may not be shown in the movies and all of the history books. It's 2 different versions, okay, of the history of America. Two main versions, which we're not going to get into right now, but there are two main versions. With regards to the Reconstructional era, antebellum era, so on and so forth, colonial era, two different main versions. Everybody clear on this? So, obviously, the people in America, regardless whether they were in the North or the South, because there was slavery in the North and it was slavery in the South. There were people that were agreement with slavery in the North, and there were people who are against slavery in the South. So, we know that the supporters of slavery, wherever they were, whether they were black, whether they were white, whether they were Native Americans, whoever they were, and that's another major misconception about slavery, is attaching slavery to a color. That's a major misconception in the East and in the West. Okay, there were other slaves of different colors, and there were reasons behind people choosing and wanting certain ethnicities to be slaves. There were several reasons, whether it was their physical strength, whether it was the size of the continent and the amount of population, or whether it was a concept of infidelity, as was known in the Ottoman harems. They would always have a black eunuch from Africa to look over the slaves and the concubines. In other words, some of those people that they thought were eunuchs weren't always necessarily eunuchs. So if a woman she slept with the one who was in charge of the women, they will automatically know that she's what? It's an African father. Everybody understand this? And it wasn't just a necessarily thing just because he's black. It was a what? It was a hikmah. Everybody clear on this? In other words, if we have a Russian slave girl, and then we have a Russian overseer of the slave girl, if she sleeps with him, there's no way of determining that it's not the Sultan's child. Everybody get it or not? But he's obviously, even if the child has light skin, one way or another is going to have some type of what? African feature. No. The skin can be white as snow, but it's going to have some type of what? Everybody clear on this or not? So the point is there are many misconceptions with regards to what? Slavery. Many misconceptions and many inaccuracies. What's important is the people in this country, some of them that were for slavery, they justified it and they said that slavery was something that was in the Bible. It was in the Old Testament, and the New Testament didn't abolish it. The New Testament did not speak out against it. And the different prophets and the messengers of God said that they had what? Slaves, many slaves. So slavery, they say, was the will of God. Is the natural way to have slaves. That's how it is. Let alone we bring civilization and culture and Christianity to these savage African slaves. Everybody understand this? So, they justify slavery by mentioning Jesus and the way of Jesus and the people who came before Jesus. But would Jesus treat his slaves the way that you treated them? No. What does the Bible, what does the New Old Testament, what does Christianity tell about what? What are you doing of atrocities, of inhumane treatment, and the list goes on. Or not even that, deeper than that. Forget the slaves. People get caught up in the slaves. The actual slave master losing his soul because he's not allowed to sleep with the slave girl. That's considered to be what? Adultery. He wasn't allowed to do that. Everybody understand this? He wasn't allowed to do many, many, many different things that they did and they practiced. So the point is that it's pure what? Hypocrisy to use the religion for something on what? Half of the side, and not to use the religion for the what? Other half side. Everybody understand this? In other words, if you mention that slavery is permissible in Islam, then you also have to mention the Islamic teachings and guidelines for the treatment of those slaves. Everybody clear on this? This is extremely important. And we said this many times before. If you talk about the imam or the Muslim ruler and the rights that he has, which are in the Sunnah, no doubt about that. You also have to talk about the rights that the subjects have over the imam, the ruler. And he is to look after them, protect them. He's supposed to cut the hand of the thief. He's supposed to whip the drunkard. He's supposed to establish the salat, lead them in hajj, lead them in jihad. He's supposed to be their ruler, their leader. Everybody understand this? And it's totally unfair to just mention what? One thing and not mention the what? Other. And that's what most of us do as human beings. We use the religion when it's convenient for us. When it's what? When it's convenient. I'm the teacher. Respect me, obey me, listen to me, take care of me. Huh? But what about, I have a question. No, I don't have no time. Mufti can't come to my house. I don't have no time. Mufti can't teach a class. No, I'm sorry. My lecture. I don't have no time. I'm not fulfilling my what? Obligation. My end of the what? Of the bargain. Everybody got this or not? Everybody understand this? This is very, very important. So this is one of the pieces of hypocrisy upon which this country was founded. They mentioned certain things, Christianity, but they didn't actually take the way of Jesus. Some people did, but most what? Didn't. Everybody understand this? I don't think Jesus would have done what you did to those native people. I don't think Jesus would have treated his slaves like that. I don't think so. I don't think Abraham and Jacob, I don't think they would have what? Dealt with their slaves the way that you did. But the good book was used to what? Enforce and uphold what? Slavery. So we have to be mindful as Muslims, guys. And this pertains to what? Any aspect of the deen. It's always what? Two sides to everything. You want the child to respect you, to obey you, to listen to you, but you don't take care of the child. You're not merciful to the child. You're not kind to your child. You don't go to the park and play around with your child. Everybody understands he has rights on you, just like you have rights what? On him. And the moment, speaking to myself firstly, the moment we become totally lopsided like this, that's when everything goes topsy-turvy. And Islam has no more meaning anymore. It's just something that we put upon our tongues. Racism in Islam, prejudice, colorism. The moment something goes wrong, then there's, we're brothers, akhi, we're brothers. Bilal was black. He was with the Prophet, we're brothers. But that's only when something is terribly what? Wrong. Someone oppresses you. This happens all the time, especially overseas, in Medina. You get into an argument in a supermarket, someone oppresses you, someone disrespects your wife, anything. You lose your temper, some brothers, may beat somebody up. And the moment that happens, just astaghfirullah, haram, we're brothers in Islam, I'm Arab, you're black, we're supposed to get along. But where was all of the brotherhood when you what? Disrespected me. Everybody clear on this? Or it happens here in New York City. It's the Muslims, they have to unify when things go wrong. When the police are killing Muslims or harassing Muslims, then everybody's what, Sheikh Khan? Come together. But when everything's peaceful is what? You, Bengali, you stay there. Pakistani, you stay in your mosque. Black, you stay where you are. Guyanese, what? You stay where you are. That's sad. That's unfortunate. So the brotherhood and the Islam breaking these different idols and totem poles of racism, of prejudice, of colorism, of tribalism, it has to exist all of the time. It's not just when it's what? Everybody clear on this? And that's why this is one of the reasons why we live the way we do as Muslims. And Islam, in most cases, is just something that we just say what? Flick off the tongue. But the actual practice of it is something that's in another valley, and we're in a what? Another valley. May Allah help us all. I mean, there's just a few pieces of advice, and like we always say, what? Food for thought. To get your mind thinking. Just sit down and think about it. Wallahu ta'ala alam.